And let's begin. Okay, my name is Dan Tate, and I work for HE.SHE.THEY, Pioneer DJ. And I've worked with the company for a number of years, and as part of my role with the company, we make long-form documentaries. So myself and Lawrence Coe, who is still behind the camera over here, we co-produce and co-direct long-form documentaries for Pioneer DJ HE.SHE.THEY, covering a wide range of topics. These topics, or this kind of content, came in response to the short-form content that we used to make, and we realized that a lot of people began at the sort of dawn of social media to make that content themselves. So we thought this is an ideal opportunity to make the content that no one else really can justify. So that's why we tried to make these long-form documentaries that explored topics that we knew were important, that were interesting and fascinating, and we could take this opportunity to discuss them. So I'm not going to talk about all of them, but I want to mention one just in the context of the documentary that we've made, We Become One. It's called Why We DJ, and it explored this idea of why do DJs DJ? Why do they love playing in front of crowds? Now, I know that you can think of 100 million reasons why, but it got us thinking after that, when COVID happened, that DJs were still playing, but they were streaming online, and the crowd wasn't present. Freudian slip there. The crowd just weren't there, and everyone was streaming these sets, and like the music was there, your favorite DJs were there, but it just wasn't the same. And it got us thinking, you know, what makes that collective shared musical experience so visceral, so powerful? And it got us looking into not only the science, but the cultural aspect of this shared collective experience. So we made a documentary about it. And it gives me great pleasure to now introduce my panelists today. We've got Valentino Barrioseta, Kikelomo. I'm not using your surname because you're an artiste. Stephen Brains, and Dr. Julia Basso. And this documentary explores this visceral experience. So I'd invite you now to watch on the screen to my left a trailer for the film, hoping that this will add some kind of context for the discussion that we're going to have today. So if you could roll the tape, that would be amazing.
I can't fathom what a life without music would be, because that's all my life has ever been.
It sounds good, it feels good. It makes you wake up, it makes you want to go places, it makes you want to create. It's part of my DNA. I know nothing else.
Humans evolved in a unique way among species in that our neurons fire synchronously with a beat.
And so when we dance together, when we listen to music, that whole social network of brain areas is kind of lighting up, firing together while we're in the same room, dancing to the same music.
We were all like having this like slow build, and then it dropped. We just danced so hard, and I like blacked out.
You know, it's when you have a connection with the crowd and you create this new energy, you know, when you get the chills.
I think it's a way of like connecting you and inviting you into new communities, meeting new people, like-minded people. So it's really important just for like finding yourself.
You feel it, like internally, externally, you feel it with your friends, spiritually. Yeah. Like, it's a vibe. You can't verbally describe it because you physically feel it.
I've always loved science and thought that would be my career. However, music started playing a bigger role in my life. I became a DJ, and eventually my entire world started to revolve around music. But the question I have is why? What is the science behind why music has such an impact on us as individuals, but also, why does it seem to have the power to create connections between people and bring us closer together, especially on the dance floor?
So who's intrigued? Who wants to try and understand what clubbing is for? You know, why do we love sharing this musical experience? And I've, of course, got to start with Kike, who is our lead contributor. We went on her journey, and I want to invite you, Kike, who is a DJ, producer, and founder of Oroko Radio. And yeah, let's kick it off. Kike, what was this journey like? Why did you go on it? And what did you find out?
The journey was a pretty intense one, but in a good way. It was a little bit overwhelming. So I actually come from a scientific background. I studied integrated engineering at university, so I've always loved, it's not cap, like I actually do love science. So when Dan and Lawrence approached me for this opportunity, it felt like the perfect opportunity because also for me, you know, convincing my Nigerian parents like, hey, I'm gonna like drop my engineering career and become a DJ was a bit of like a bit of a, you know, to be fair, shout out to them, they were pretty supportive, but you know, there was definitely some eyebrows raised. But being able to go on this journey and understand actually why do we do what we do and come out with the answers of actually club culture speaks to some of our most basic needs as human beings in terms of these feelings of social salience, being able to come together, feel connected with one another. Throughout this journey, I learned about just the sheer power of music, its ability to heal, its ability to connect, how much goes into what happens when a DJ is connecting with the crowd. And that for me was so uplifting. It in a way, it almost re-justified why I do what I do. Like, you know, sometimes, especially with social media these days, there's a lot of notions about what DJs are. There's a lot of connections with ego, with I don't know, with money, with, you know, wanting to be famous or whatever. And, you know, those are all, I guess, semi-valid reasons to be a DJ. But for me, it's just about the connection that I have with people and being able to facilitate this positivity because of what I play. And so being able to have this documentary as like a reference point is like, hey, you want to know why I do what I do? Check it out on YouTube. That's been, you know, amazing. And then, yeah, on the journey, being able to connect with scientists, with DJs, with community builders, and just see it all come together was, yeah, brilliant.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, I now want to move on to Dr. Julia Basso, sat to my right here. So Julia is a neuroscientist conducting pioneering research into the relationship between music, movement, and brain function at Virginia Tech in the US. So, Julia, I think from a scientific perspective, because when we've done this before, people have actually seen the documentary, I think for everyone here, could you explain scientifically, from a neuroscience perspective, what's happening in our brains when we listen to music and dance with one another?
Sure. So when we think about dance, you know, first and foremost, is a physical activity. And physical exercise is one of the best things we can do for our brain. It is one of the best ways to promote neuroplasticity, neurogenesis, all kinds of changes in the brain. But it's also an art form, right? And when we think about dance in comparison to, say, other aerobic exercise like cycling or running, for example, it has the sensory motor components for sure. But it also has those rhythmic components, right? We're in training to the musical rhythms, we catch the beat. It has cognitive capacity too. Often in dance, we're learning and remembering movements. We're making up new movements, we're improvising. And it has socio and emotional components as well. So we're often doing it in groups of people, like in the club, on the dance floor. And it can be emotionally evocative. And so I considered it this enriched form of physical activity. It taps into so many different areas of the brain, both cortical, that is the cortex, outside of the brain, outside of the top area, and then under the subcortical. So it's engaging all these different areas of the brain and enhancing neuroplasticity, promoting change in the brain in a positive way. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. I didn't expect the answer to be so short and so succinct. Maybe you could, I mean, in the documentary, we talk about this soup of chemicals that's released when we listen to music. Could you maybe discuss those?
Yeah, and so when we dance and when we listen to music, there's a whole slew of neurochemicals that are released, including dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter for reward and pleasure, so we feel kind of pleasurable sensations. There's serotonin, the neurotransmitter that promotes happiness, positive mood states, oxytocin release, and those are the social bonding kind of hormones, the ones that are released between mother and baby during romantic partnerships. You also see a decrease in cortisol. Now, there's kind of an interesting relationship with cortisol. There may be increases, there may be decreases, because, basically engaging in physical activity activates our sympathetic nervous system, our HPA axis, but it does this in a kind of a regulatory way. So it's protective, it's regulatory, and it helps to, when we encounter what's called a psychosocial stressor in our environment, it's protective in that way. So it serves as essentially a protective mechanism. And then also you're seeing changes at the level of the immune system, promoting an anti-inflammatory state. So you're having this whole neurochemical process that's happening in the body, that's happening in the brain, and essentially it can promote these mood states that are elevated, your really heightened positive mood states and social connection, feeling bonded with others. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. And just staying sciencey, just for a little bit longer, maybe if we could now touch upon brainwaves and the way that, and if you could talk about entrainment, because obviously when we dance with each other, as we saw in the trailer, that has a very positive effect. Right. And then when you entrain your body to the music, when you're dancing to the music, that has a positive effect. And then DJs themselves, they're entraining one beat with another. Could you talk about entrainment a little bit for us, please?
Yeah. So what happens when you think about music and musical rhythms and tones, they're oscillations. There are these oscillations that come into the auditory system, and they start to oscillate. The frequency of the sound actually causes oscillations in the brain that are of the same frequency. And so this is what entrainment is. And then the auditory cortex that's oscillating at those frequencies, it's anatomically connected to our motor cortices, which is why we can, when we hear the music, we want to, get to the beat, get to the rhythms. And so that's kind of physiologically why that happens. And so this is a thing that's called intra-brain synchrony or functional connectivity, in that you're getting these brain areas to connect with one another, join together, again, create neuroplasticity. But when we do it in large groups of people, what ends up happening is that, and you can imagine on the dance floor, kind of, in that middle school setting when you're dancing with your partner, or kind of at the club, right, dancing with everybody, the neural oscillations of the collective start to oscillate at the same frequencies as we're jumping together, fist pumping, dancing in other ways. So the movements of our bodies that become synchronous are then actually reflected at the level of the brain. We have what's called inter-brain synchrony, and we're starting to show that these neural oscillations between people create social bonding. And we have studies that show this in mothers and their children, mothers with depression and their children after dance interventions, that we can enhance interbrain synchrony between dyads. Yeah.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So I want to bring this onto Stephen now. Wow, some Turbo fans in the audience. I love this. I mean, so I don't need to say that he's founder of the revered party, an award-winning label, HE.SHE.THEY, celebrating diversity in all its forms, do I? So I think my question to you, Stephen, is that, you're throwing parties all around the world.
Also a qualified psychologist.
Oh, there we go.
But Geordie, so I couldn't have done that. I could have written that on an email, but not said it out loud. So I was like, very well done.
Excellent. I think I want to talk to you, Stephen, about this ability of music to cross boundaries. And, we've already touched upon entrainment from a scientific perspective, but maybe you could talk about your party and the way that it's a space for people to literally unite on the dance floor, no matter sort of what diverse background or culture they might have come from. Do you maybe want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting, actually, because some of the things you both touched on actually underpin that element. Like we're ultimately pack animals as humans, and the release of dopamine, serotonin, I never can say it. Oxytocin. I was a psychologist 20 years ago, and sometimes I get the wrong oxy, and then it's like, no, not that oxy. Yeah. So, but yeah, like, so in lockdown, which was a really, unfortunately, unique situation for most of us, we couldn't have that social element. So you had the nearest de facto thing to it, which was communal watching of things. But then I think that what COVID did was actually kind of made a lot of people appreciate again what social structures are and how important they are. Because we started taking everything for granted a little bit and lost sight of it. And not to get political, but there's a lot of like division stuff online, you might have noticed, if you have a phone or eyes or ears. And there's a lot of stuff trying to pull us apart. And in lockdown, I think that was both amplified, that there's lots of people trying to unite and lots of people trying to rip apart. And then you go back to clubs in real life, and everyone met together and you're like, oh, actually, you're just a nice human, and everyone kind of got on. So the thing with HE.SHE.THEY, lots of people think it's a queer party because we talk about trans rights, and because I like a D, but that's where it ends. It's like, it's actually about inclusion. So the party is, it doesn't matter what race, sexuality, race, religion, color, creed, as long as you just want to be nice and respectful, you can all come together, which was the origins of music, was people who'd been marginalized, predominantly black and brown and queer people, coming together to form community where there wasn't. Or like in queer spaces, when most places you couldn't kiss your boyfriend, or if you're a girl, kiss your girlfriend or your partner, you had to form these other clubs and spaces to be fine, where dance music was the first kind of space, really, possibly underpinned by ecstasy, where everyone was like, oh yeah, I love you too. And it de-radicalized a lot of people from right-wing opinions, which seem to sadly be creeping back into the dance music community. But, but like, bit by bit, dance music's always been this amazing leveler because of rhythms and things like that. We become one kind of tribe and one commonality again. So it's funny when people think that HE.SHE.THEY is some kind of amazing radical thing, and it's what, like, to not treat other people like pieces of has become a radical position, which is really scary. And actually, people are always like, well, how does that work? How does everyone mesh together? We never have problems, we never have fights, we never have anything on those things. So we set up some rules and intentions, as you'll see in the Brave space. It's actually really handy as a heuristic. No ableism, no ageism, no bigotry, no body shaming, no homophobia, no misogyny, no racism, no sexism, no transphobia, no xenophobia. That's just basic societal rules, which I think dance floor should reflect. And if you've ever gone on a night out and been like, you know, I had a great night, but it just wasn't racist enough. Or there wasn't enough homophobia there. Like, problem isn't with the night, the problem is deeply, deeply within you. So, long answer short, I think they're just, like, the party and everything is just a really basic need for humans to come together and then to remember that we aren't just headlines or memes, we're just humans who fuck up sometimes and do well at other times. And it's actually just that those rules are a really low bar. Not like you have to go and open a charity for trans donkeys or something. It's just like, just don't be horrible. Just be respectful. Let that person lead their life how you would like yours to be treated. Easy. And then we build a party around it.
Fantastic.
I love you, mate.
Fantastic. I mean, you know, I feel so motivated by that because I think, you know, people do overlook the fact of where electronic music did come from. And it was about these safe spaces. It was about these third spaces where people could go to and they could feel safe and they could feel accepted and not judged. And I love this idea that we discovered while making the documentary that didn't quite make it in. But it was this idea that we asked Dr. Daniel Levitin about whether the loudness of music had an impact upon us, and what that impact was, apart from just making us feel really good. And the science said that it's basically triggering, is it our amygdala at the back of our brains?
Your amygdala is this little diamond shape.
Oh yeah, what's the monkey bit at the back? The ganglia. Oh look, there we go. That triggers our fight or flight, and basically it was this play between our reasoning mind and the limbic system.
Yeah.
You see, I should not try and talk about this stuff with two scientists. But it was this idea that this play between these two areas made us feel good, because it made us think that danger was imminent, but then our reasoning mind said, it's okay, danger's not imminent. But you enjoy those rush of endorphins. But I think in response to what Stephen was saying, that I really like the idea of, was that loud music makes us feel anonymous. And then when we're anonymous, or we feel anonymous, that's when we can express ourselves. And that freedom of expression, I think, is so important. And I think it's something that is being eroded at the time.
Especially when there's no camera phones. And you can actually be free, like, in the space to enjoy and not surveyed.
I want to talk now to Valentino. He's founder of Bridges for Music, a unique charity based in Langa, South Africa, built on the belief that music can transform lives. I hope I've got that right. Val, my question to you is, you've seen from a kind of society perspective how uniting music can be. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, for those that don't know, we operate mainly in South Africa, and obviously South Africa has a big history of segregation between white and black people. But, you know, today is no news to everyone, you know, the talent that is coming out of the country, and, you know, we see Afro House taking on the world, Amapiano, all these new genres coming out of there. And I think sound music has become a vehicle for culture and for standing up and rising up, you know, because people come together through it. And big music movements around the world have happened mainly in places of struggle. So if you look at Chicago or Berlin, you know, with the fall of the wall, and now it's happening in South Africa because of the history of apartheid. So from our perspective, I mean, we have a school in a small township outside of Cape Town, and we can see how this place is becoming a hub for white and black people to integrate together. We've been bringing to this school some of the biggest artists in the world as well, like Skrillex, and, you know, HE.SHE.THEY has been there. And we see how a lot of white kids from the city center has started to come into the black communities for the first time, you know, just following, you know, their passion for music. And once they are in the same space and they're talking about music and they're sharing their passion, you know, any like stigmas from the past or any boundaries kind of dissolve. So yeah, I think, you know, from a societal level, we've seen it all over the world. And I think South Africa is just the tip of the iceberg in Africa. I think it's going to happen all over. We are seeing it now in Mozambique, Botswana. There's new genres coming and growing, and, you know, new communities and, you know, record labels and party promoters, you know, raising, and yeah, it's super exciting.
Thank you. And in response to that, Kike, maybe you could talk about the radio station that you founded, Oroko Radio, that features in the documentary, and what Oroko stands for and why do you set it up?
Absolutely. I think one of the motivations initially when I started the radio station was going to the radio stations based in Accra in Ghana, and going there and kind of seeing the community out there, making friends, kind of belonging to this system, but also recognizing that was also quote unquote African music. A lot of the references to African music usually you know, connect to Afrobeats or Amapiano or Afro House. But, you know, some of my friends were making folk music, punk music, rock, just a huge plethora of sound. And I wanted to be able to not only platform that, but also kind of allow my community to platform themselves. In the same breath, I recognized from DJing all of the people that I'd been able to connect with all around the world that kind of had underrepresented communities or sounds that weren't necessarily mainstream. And so I wanted to kind of build this platform that brought people all together. And it was amazing just to kind of see, we only started about 3 years ago, but just the global community that we've built, like, even though we're based in Accra in Ghana, we have over 300 over 300 residents across 50 different countries. I had the most surreal experience. I was touring in Brazil from January to March. I was walking down Copacabana Beach with my radio merchandise, with my little cap on, and someone stopped me and was like, "Oh my God, Aroca Radio!" Like, and she could like barely speak English, so we did like a little broken Portuguese English kind of middle ground. But for me to like have this person who connected with our community and connected with what we represented and wanted to have a show, and in the end, it was actually an amazing DJ. She's already an established DJ, but the fact that she felt like she belonged to a part of something through the music that we built was the most surreal experience. It's like, okay, from Accra to Rio de Janeiro, like that's insane. And I think also for me, you know, with a lot of the work that we do through DJ workshops, we do kind of like integrate, acceleration programs, and just to see our community go out and like build between themselves. We've had residents from Nigeria connect with residents in Sweden, you know, residents in Qatar connect with residents in Colombia, you know, and like just seeing and like experiencing the way that music brings people together has been honestly the reward of a lifetime. You know, that's why I do what I do.
Amazing. Amazing. Oh, Stephen.
Can I just add to that? Because that is the best part of it for sure. And one of the great things as well with techno and house, a lot of it is instrumental. So it therefore blurs any kind of language barriers you have. But yeah, it's when people have like heard or liked or you've been able to join these mad dots because there's a trans person literally in like Peru who feels part of something where they're not part of something back home. It's just crazy rewarding. Like.
Exactly.
So, going back to your journey, Kike, that you went on, for everyone here, what do you think was one of the biggest things that you learned from your journey, and how has that changed the way that you perform?
I would say that, I guess two things in terms of how it affects my performance, but just generally how I feel about music. Just really understanding how music is so intrinsic to us as human beings. Like, it was our first form of communication long before language developed. It's so connected with our biology. You know, the way that we evolved facilitated the way that we could speak with our vocal cords dropping because we stood up. You know, us walking on 2 feet enabled us to develop this sense of rhythm. And so kind of like really understanding like just how it connects with us from a biological, neurological perspective just kind of made me like even more of a music nerd. Like I just love it so much. Like music is so awesome. And for me also just kind of like recognizing how we as human beings kind of relate to patterns, repetition. I think that's one of the biggest appeals of electronic music, how we can kind of like detect all of these small changes in the way that we play, whether it's, you know, bringing in a filter, building up something to this big drop, playing with expectations, playing with the way that people relate to the music. One of my biggest, I guess, selling points or unique selling points as a DJ is that my sets are very eclectic, but I like to kind of like bring in these elements of surprise. I was saying at one of the premieres the other day, I'd just been playing in Panorama Bar in Berlin, in Berghain, and I played this edit of the Macarena. And people were like, "Oh, you really played the Macarena in Berghain?" I was like, "Yeah, and I did it well," because like I know that bringing in these elements of surprise, that moment when you see people looking at the dance floor like, is she really about to play the Macarena? But it was a very tasteful edit. Let me just protect my reputation. You know, it was very tasteful. But like that moment of surprise, and you can viscerally see that like serotonin rushing, that dopamine rushing. So like I think it's just influenced for me to go like even deeper into the way that I play, playing with, you know, whether it's the techniques in which I mix, you know, changing, using elements that can, you know, bring these moments of delight, or my song selection, also going into kind of like these moments of recognition, and just also enabling me to enjoy what I do as well. Like I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. Like I genuinely love to DJ, and you know, I'll be going till I'm in a wheelchair with my grandkids. Like, what do you know about this? What do you know about Ibiza? So yeah.
I love that. Now, Julia beside me, what are you clutching here? Because I think you've been conducting an experiment, haven't you, before our panel took place. So could you tell everyone what you've been up to here?
Yes, so we've been conducting an experiment earlier in the day on some vocal toning. But yeah, I wanted to show you kind of the brain in action. We're having a secret brain being recorded in the audience here. But these are our EEG caps, and these are our kind of the EEG caps I bring around for scientific outreach. I'm happy to pass it around, actually the audience, so you're free to kind of explore. We have 8 electrodes here, and then we have the brain activity of this secret individual audience. I don't know if she wants to reveal herself. She's over here. Hello. Hello. So she's been having her brain activity recorded this whole time. And so you can actually see the neural oscillations on the screen in live time as they're emerging from her brain. So let me pass that around just so you can kind of see and observe. And I'll be here afterwards, answer any questions you might have. Yeah.
Excellent. So if I could ask, what kind of activity is that monitoring? And are these brain waves?
Yeah, so you're seeing the brain waves on the screen, and it's an amalgamation, basically, of all the brain waves. So what we'll do after that is we take them and we decompose them using a technique called fast Fourier transform, which I understand we do in music as well, to kind of decompose that signal. And we can look at delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma waves. The brain is made of all these distinct waveforms. During sleep, we have more slow wave, large oscillations called delta. And then during, say, if we're in the club, we're probably up at beta or gamma, really active mind. The sympathetic nervous system is activated, and we're really engaged and focused and kind of in that flow. And during more meditative states, maybe calm, or if we've even in that meditative walk, if anybody went this morning, we're going to be more in an alpha or a theta state, kind of very calm, cool, collected. So what's interesting about being in the club, and I think of course as a scientist, thinking of it as an intervention, but the DJ can really, through the tuning of the music, bring people up, bring people down, tune into people's brain waves to really alter their conscious states in pretty profound ways. So yeah, I love thinking about it like that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that explanation. So we know that we're rattling towards the end of the panel here, but I'd love to hear any questions from the audience. We've got a couple of roving mics. This would be a wonderful opportunity to ask these amazing people up here. Oh, look, we've got one here. Oh, no, wait for the mic,
Hiya. I'm super interested in flow state, and I have a brand called The Rogue Room where we bring club culture and rebellious wellness together, bringing those two kind of worlds into collision. Flow state is what we deal in almost, and I'm keen to hear about triggers for flow state. Obviously, music is a really big part of that for us, breath, movement. Would you say that there is an optimum time for accessing that flow, that meditation point? Is there certain musical triggers in terms of beat, BPM, vocal, anything that you think has shifted your sort of insight doing this piece of research? I'd love to just understand a bit deeper about that.
Yeah, so flow state is definitely, it's one of those states of deep focus and concentration where time is lost and you're kind of the essence, totally in the moment, mindfulness is enhanced, and you're really focusing on kind of the body-mind consciousness is heightened. And so what we're finding is that during these states, and performers actually in studying professional dancers, they have what are called autolectic personalities, and so they have high dispositional flow. They're kind of naturally in that flow state. So to get them even higher, it's kind of they've peaked out really, which is pretty cool. But yeah, so during those states, there's less of an anxious mind, and it's more, we see that actually beta is decreasing a little bit, and lower kind of in that lower state of beta almost towards alpha is very predictive of high flow states. And this study was done in professional dancers who were kind of pre-Broadway kind of dancers during performance, after kind of rehearsal and through the whole semester, and then during their performance where they kind of had pre-anxiety situations. And so, yeah, you could imagine listening to maybe these alpha, and I know we have a playlist of alpha music, maybe in training the brain to alpha rhythms, really getting into some more of those calm meditative states before going out onto the, performing as a DJ, for example, might help to then
benefit and get into that flow state.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julia. Do we have some more questions? Well, I think I've got one question which I'd love to pose. When we did screenings of the documentary to launch it in Berlin and London, particularly in London, there was a feeling in the room that people felt motivated to use the information that they'd learned from the documentary to ensure that like more people were aware of the positive effects of electronic music, both from a cultural perspective, but also from a body and mind perspective. Oh, look. So it's...
I was just going to say, our lovely electronic guinea pig here, Emma Marshall, has got an amazing book called Music is Medicine, right? Coming up, which is literally about that. She's been on this morning with Alison Hammond.
Amazing. Come on,
you
you must have a question, or you want to say something about music is medicine?
Explain what it's about?
Sorry, just a roving mic over here.
It's really good.
Thank you for being our guinea pig, by the way.
Pleasure. Yeah, thank you so much, Brains. I am doing a PhD on using electronic music as medicine. So everything you've said, everything you've all discussed, it's all in there culturally, scientifically, anecdotally, because all of these pieces fit together. So from looking at neuroscience, how it affects the brain and the body, why raving is actually so good for us, especially when we change the narrative around hedonism. You know, hedonism is literally the forefront of electronic music, unfortunately, when actually there's so many health benefits to it. And so the book kind of explores all of these different angles, looking at the origins of house and techno, looking at where and why that came from, through to looking and exploring tribes throughout Africa, throughout Brazil, lots of South America and Central America, Mexico, and how all of this comes together, the fact that raving is actually our version of that. It's our version of ceremony. And so if we change the perception and we bring in the science and we add all these pieces together, we can then get people into that just thought process consciously that this is doing more for you than just, I want to go out and get off my nut. Do you know what I mean? And I think that that's where the shift is happening. We're seeing loads of people like going out, they're not drinking, people are going sober, they're seeing catharsis, they're feeling difference in emotional states, mental states, physical states, and all of these conversations are super important to bridge the gap. That's really what this is about. Music is an art form, but it's also a science. And so when we're able to bridge those gaps together through cultural commentary, like this is where we start to see shifts in a much bigger capacity, because, you know, everyone here, I'm sure, loves electronic music. That's why we do it. That's why we're here in the first place, and there is a reason for that. So yeah, my book is coming out soon. Thank you. It's called Music is Medicine, and it's going to be on Amazon, and I appreciate the support. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that? Because I literally am just submitted an article for Resident Advisor, an op-ed on exactly that, like the fact that science and club culture need to work closer together. We need to remove like the connection with hedonism, and that it actually is medicine. Like, you know, there's all these studies that show that, you know, electronic music can decrease the amygdaloid protein, which is connected with Alzheimer's. It's been used to reduce recovery times from surgery. As you know, Julia said, treating mothers with postnatal depression. There's all these like health applications, and you know, club culture is in a state of crisis at the moment. And you know, we could look to new ways of clubbing. Imagine, you know, clubs being used as places of study in the day, and then, you know, like clubs at night. I could be a sonic therapist by day and a DJ by night. Like, there's all these different applications, but we just need to think outside the box, and that comes from the connection of club culture and science. So, period.
Absolutely. And that's what my company does, by the way.
Let's have a little chat afterwards. Let's do it.
Amazing. Well, if you've enjoyed what you've heard today and you're intrigued, please, please, please go on YouTube. We're not behind any kind of paywall. We wanted to make sure that this content was available for everyone. So please go and watch We Become One on YouTube, our film that we've made with these lovely people. Thank you so much to my guests this afternoon, Valentino, Kikelomo, Stephen, and Dr. Julia. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks so much for listening.